Alright, so now moving from the thorax to the abdominal area. So the GI tract, and we'll cover this more in detail next semester. So how about sympathetic activity? Well, remember that the parasympathetic is rest and digest. The GI tract, the sympathetic activity is not time to rest and digest. So you're going to decrease that blood flow with sympathetic activity. You're going to decrease blood flow through to the digestive tract, and you're also going to slow down the activity as well. So not just blood flow, but just how much the stomach is churning, and also how much of these enzymes and chemicals they're producing as well. And not only do you have the stomach, you also have the pancreas that produces a lot of enzymes, and you have these secretions that help with digestion. But again, this is not rest and digest time, so you're going to slow all of that down. The sphincter, so you actually have many openings. You have an opening here, a sphincter muscle there, here, and two over here, and actually you have sphincters all around. So they're like little doors in the digestive tract along different areas that connect the different organs of the digestive tract and the exit as well. So all of these are going to constrict. So it's like if you're hitting a bunch of red stoplights along a straight thoroughfare. Like if you're going on a street and there's all the lights turn red, that's going to stop traffic. Same with the GI tract. All these sphincters are constricting. They're going to stop the movement of flow and digestion. So because why? It's sympathetic time. Now, parasympathetic activity, what is that going to do? Well, luckily, this is pretty simple with the GI tract. Now it's rest and digest time. So you want to increase your blood flow. Again, why? Because you want that blood flow to carry the blood to carry nutrients that are being absorbed by the digestive tract to the rest of the body. And then you're also going to increase stomach activity and also increase pancreatic and stomach activity as well. And it looks like this image is overlapping, but the sphincters of the digestive tract, they're going to dilate and open up. Because why? Parasympathetic time, rest and digest time, open for business, open up all the doors. Now the liver. So I'm going to does many things, and the liver is like the unsung hero of a lot of the processes in your body. But for this class, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. So one of the main functions or main effects of the sympathetic nervous system on the liver is that it breaks down glycogen into glucose. And you might be like, glycogen, if you don't remember what it is, you might be like, that sounds familiar, but what was it again? So remember that you have your biological macromolecules, and glycogen is one of the ways your body stores carbohydrates. Now, remember that glucose is a pretty simple molecule, 6 carbons, but you can link glucose together and daisy chain it, and not just make linear chains, but you can also make branched chains of glucose, and a very highly branched form of this glucose is called glycogen. So glycogen is basically just a bunch of glucose molecules linked together in a branched network, like a tree. So this entire molecule right here is glycogen, which is made out of glucose. Now, what happens with sympathetic activity in the liver is that it's going to break down glycogen into glucose. And what happens is that this big molecule is going to be digested by the liver is going to break up the small molecule into smaller glucose molecules. And this glucose can now enter your bloodstream and be redistributed among your cells in your body. So the liver is an important storage site for carbohydrates, but if your body needs it, it can break it down to glucose. And that makes sense, right? Fight or flight, you're going to use up more energy. So you want to release, instead of storing energy, you want to release it and do a stimulus package to your entire cells and just sprinkle all this glucose so that they can have energy. So this is why it makes sense you want to break down glycogen with sympathetic activity. Now parasympathetic, this is rest and digest time. And if you're digesting something, you're probably getting increased glucose and carbohydrates into your system. Now, if you don't need to use all that carbohydrates, what can you do? You can store it up for later. So what it's going to do is increase glycogen synthesis and storage. Again, now it's no longer sympathetic activity. Now you have all these nutrients coming in. Maybe it's time to store the ones we don't need right now, so we can use it later when we actually have sympathetic activity. So with glucose and glycogen, so what's going to happen with sympathetic activity is or parasympathetic activity is that glycogen is going to be made. So you're going to take all the excess glucose and make it into glycogen. Now this is unofficial, but I like using this because like not only do I think like okay associate sympathetic with exercise, but for the digestive system, just a guess, which do you think is the anabolic system? And if you need a hint, remember that anabolic is the opposite of catabolic, right? And catabolic is when you break something down. And therefore, anabolic, just like anabolic steroids, is when you build something up. So which do you think is the system that builds something up? So the sympathetic nervous system is catabolic because why? You're actually breaking down your stores because, again, you're doing an activity that requires a lot of energy. So it makes sense that you would break down your energy reserves so that you mobilize it, and then your cells can break down those nutrients into energy. So this is why the sympathetic is sometimes nicknamed the catabolic system. So and it's also involved with stress, and this is why if you have constant stress, like most of us these days, this is why things tend to break down because you have this catabolic activity that's breaking down the molecules to free up energy reserves. So again, this is using up energy stores instead of actually building it up. And anabolic, so parasympathetic nervous system, like especially if you're into like fitness and you're into bodybuilding, you want to be anabolic, right? You want to build things up. And this is also why it's not just diet, but also rest as well. So why? Because you're starting to increase your nutrient absorption. If you have more nutrients, you have more building blocks to build things like proteins or build energy reserves like glycogen. So this is kind of like what happens is that it restores the nutrient content of your blood because why? You're digesting things and you're also reintroducing these nutrients to your blood as well. And all the excess, well, you can store it for later. So this is why. These are nicknames for it. Again, widely not accepted by all textbooks and authorities on this, but I find it personally useful to think of it that parasympathetic system is anabolic, sympathetic nervous system is catabolic.